What up, perps? Kid Copious, back in effect. Purple State Party. You know what we're doing here? We're repping America, the center, and common sense. We got to get to a lot of that common sense before we can fix America. You know, the media just loves it when we're in these one of two boxes. They know where to send the propaganda, where to send the ads. And the politicians, the fraudsters, the crooks out there, they love it because when we're too busy sitting here defending our stupid tribes, we're too busy to notice what's really going on, what's really costing us our way of life, what's really costing us money. That's what I hope to expose on this show. Just some of this crap that's going on in the middle while we argue over this BS that the media continually gets us involved with. Let's get going. So yeah, the headlines from, our so-called mainstream media, the media that we used to look up to, the media we used to be able to trust. Headline, ICE arrest 5-year-old. Yeah, that's not really what happened. But, let's just spin it so we can get the clicks and we can play the tribes off of each other. But what really happened was when ICE pulled up, the dad ran off. They grabbed the dad. Somebody stayed with the kid. There's a lot of reports saying that teachers from a nearby school and even the kid's family were saying, we'll take the kid. ICE doesn't, what are they supposed to do? You can't just turn the kid over to a stranger. They just can't. It's as simple as that. The kid has been reunited with his dad, and those are the facts of the story. Not that they arrested a 5-year-old. No, they held on to him because they didn't know what to do with him. So they did the responsible thing, which was to pause and try to sort it out. Eventually, the kid said he wanted to be with his dad, so they put him with his dad. I find it funny, though, that now Joe Rogan's coming out in support of the ICE raids. And a lot of what he's saying right now is what I've been saying. It's one of the frustrating things about what I do. I'll say something, and a handful of people will hear it, and then all of a sudden, all the other podcasters and all the other pundits out there jump on board with it. But one of the things he said, and I quote here, if you could sign a piece of paper that said, we're going to allow a bunch of people into this country, most of them have no violent convictions, but about 8% of them are monsters, evil, psychopathic murderers, drug dealers. 8% is a giant fucking number. That's a giant-ass number. And he's right, as he went on to say. The real problem is that they have to do this. Does that sound familiar? This is the real problem, he says, because the Democrats did what they did. They did a crazy thing. They opened the border up and told people the border was open, and then they let people in. And then when people tried to stop them from doing it, they used court orders. And that's like he went on to say, that's what they did in Texas. Texas tried to secure the border. And the Biden administration sued to stop them from doing that. And as Rogan further went on to say, this helps the Democrats politically because the dirty secret is that the census doesn't count citizens. It counts everybody. It even counts illegals. So if you live in a community that's half illegal aliens, then you get way more congressional seats from that district than if you're in a community where all the people don't count. That's rigging politics by moving humans into place. Yeah. So the federal government has to remove these criminal illegal aliens, who, especially ones that have committed crimes since they've been here. But then you have places like Minneapolis and California that are sanctuary states that say no. And then some of these agencies actually tell ICE after the criminal illegal alien has hit the streets again. So now ICE knows where they should go. They know, hey, this place has released a bunch of people that we want, and we want to deport them because they're criminals. And you've let them go. Thanks for letting us know. Now we'll try to track them down. So they have to go to these cities. I was in an argument about this, about sanctuary states and the ICE raids that are going on. And while I agree that, some of the ICE agents are obviously undertrained and they're not prepared for it, you know who is prepared for it? The local police. That lady that got shot. The local police could have blocked off streets. They know how to do this. The local police runs parades and sporting events and other types of events where they need crowd control. They know and are trained and have the equipment and the materials to block off areas so ICE can operate. But these sanctuary states don't cooperate. So ICE has to go in like a bunch of jackbooted thugs and shit gets fucked up. And then you could blame ICE and you could blame Trump. But the reality is you should be blaming the sanctuary cities. And then the argument continued, and I finally just stopped. And I said, hey, remember what happened in the 1860s? The North said, we're no longer doing slavery. We're abolishing slavery. And the South went, no. And what did that lead to? Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of men dead, cities burned to the ground. That's the exact same thing that's happening here. The federal government is cleaning up the mess that the federal government created under a different administration. And cities are rebelling, and we're seeing people die, and we're seeing buildings being burned. It's a civil war all over again. And in this case, unlike weed, which is just ridiculous that it's illegal and alcohol is legal, but I'm not going to get onto that. The federal government has said we need to remove these people, and cities and states have said no. So what are they supposed to do? This is just the Civil War all over again. You know? And so they go in to try to, get some of these people in places like Minneapolis. And Minneapolis mobilizes its left-wing agitators. Lately we've been hearing about this fallacy about paid protesters. Look, I don't really give a shit if they're paid or not. That makes no difference to me. What I do know is that they are being organized and they are being trained by things like Ice Watch. They're filling these people's head with this left-wing rhetoric that what they're doing is noble and legal. And it's not. And we know this is happening because the Democrat Socialists of America in New York City is training thousands of activists right now. This is the same political party that is in bed with the Chinese Communist Party. They don't recognize the evil of China. They are in bed with China to oppose imperialism. Isn't that just ridiculous? Just Stop Oil does the same thing. They train people, they organize people, and whether these people are paid or volunteers, this is an organized event. This is people, again, I've said it time and time again, and I wish some of the big boys would pick up on this. These leaders of these groups are getting paid to be the leaders of these groups. Then they find their dim-witted minions, and they send them out to commit crimes, and these people end up in jail. They end up with ruined reputations. They end up being kicked out of schools. People were behind the organization that led to students harassing Jewish students on college campuses. There was an organization behind that. And at the head of that organization and supporting that organization were people collecting a paycheck. This is wrong. If you feel as though you need to protest, that's fine. If everybody just organically, grassroots, wants to go out and protest something, I don't have a problem with it. But they know what they're doing. We saw it before in Minnesota, right? Where you had people like BLM organizing these large gatherings, knowing full well that as the day progressed, the police were going to get more and more twitchy, and the protesters were going to get more and more violent until city blocks got burned down. We've seen it. This is what they do. This is what they do. All right, so we're going to move on now. So you have a bunch of world leaders over in Davos, Switzerland. And of course, Gavin Newsom has to show up because, that's what California needs. We need a governor that'll fly to Switzerland and follow Trump around and, berate Trump and let everybody know, like, oh, Trump's a bad person. And Trump cock-blocked him, which is kind of funny. Newsom wanted to speak and do an interview, and they wouldn't give him access to the U.S. area there in Davos, and whatever. I think Trump did the right thing. Gavin doesn't need to be speaking on these things. Gavin couldn't run a city, and he couldn't run a state. So what the fuck makes you think he's going to be able to run the country? Our budget is so underwater here in California. Now remember, when Gavin came on board, he had a surplus. He had extra cash laying around. He spent all that cash and has put us into a deficit. It is so underwater that our own regulators looked at the budget that he's proposing and said no. Right now, our legislators are in turmoil. They have no idea what to do because we can't approve this budget. We have run out of money. We really shouldn't be borrowing any money. So what are we going to do? We can't figure it out. But Gavin Newsom wants to be president, so he flies over to Switzerland to antagonize Trump. What's the benefit of that? Wow, Gavin Newsom is going to prove that he's the anti-Trump. Well, Trump ain't running again. No matter what you might think you have heard, Trump's not running again. Okay, so I don't know why Newsom feels like he needs to take this on. But this is what a spineless turd Gavin Newsom is. 2 years ago, he ordered state workers back to the office. The union said no. So Gavin gave him a year. The year expired, 365 days went by, and he said, okay, come back to the office. The union said no. We're now 2 years into this extension. Remember, the pandemic, about 6 years ago, let's say just 5 years ago, he hasn't gotten the workers back. Meanwhile, downtown Sacramento is starting to crumble because most of the workers aren't there. Most of the people who bought products or food or whatever, lunch, whatever, people who stayed in hotels to meet with people, things like that, they've driven the economy into the ground, and he's flying off to Davos. He thinks he can be president, but he can't even stand up to union demands in his own state. Unions that have given him money. So unions that are friendly to him. Meanwhile, Trump says, fuck Maduro. I'm going over there, and we snatch him in the middle of the night. Yeah, Trump's got his issues. We could talk about that someday. But we all know what they are. Yes, he's somewhat of a bully at times, trying to bully Greenland and stuff like that. But Gavin Newsom can't even stand up to the unions. And while he's doing all this, wow, another accomplishment for California. We became the first U.S. state to join the World Health Organization. You know, those people that were sponsored by China who tried to cover up the Wuhan lab experiment and all that crap. Remember them? Yeah. And then he has the audacity, Newsom, Gavin, has the balls, the sheer balls to come out and brag that California has had a 9% reduction in its homelessness. Really? Okay, let's look at that for a second. First of all, we already know that Los Angeles was 30% undercounted. So there goes your 9% right there. But a lot of counties aren't even counting in 2025. They count in even years. Gavin is just a gaslighter. That's what he does. That's all he has. The Sacramento Bee went on to just say, don't even remotely believe these numbers. Because that's what he does. He needs his numbers. Because he can't really talk about anything. All he can do is say, oh my gosh, for the first time in almost 2 decades, we've seen a reduction. No, we haven't. These are incomplete numbers. These are numbers that we already know are suspect. Like I just said, LA was 30% undercounted. So if our homeless population went down 9%, but LA was 30% undercounted, that adds up to 21% increase. And what's even worse about what Gavin's done lately is he's really been exposed as wearing all of these masks. When he speaks to a middle-of-the-road media agency or a right-leaning media agency, he speaks one way. Like you take the issues like trans, he'll say, well, it's complicated. Well, it's this or it's that, right? But when he talks to the left, he talks in that kind of stuff that, oh, men can get pregnant. No, they can't. I love the trans people. I will defend the trans people. I will literally physically defend a trans person. I have no problem with that. My problem is that trans men can get pregnant. Women who identify as a man can get pregnant. That is reality. But that's not what the left prescribes. That's not their playbook. And when we say their playbook, people wrote books and presented theories, and they put their names on it. This is not fiction. So why? Why is it that they have to say men, not trans men? Why? Because once you surrender to the lie, they got you. And it acts like this membership card into their club. That's what they do. That's what the left wants. They want you to wholeheartedly believe something that you know is not true. So they need you to believe that men can get pregnant, not trans men. It's not good enough that people here in America and around the world are starting to accept the LGBT community. That's not good enough. That doesn't get votes. They need you to believe the craziest part of it. That's what it is. It doesn't change how I feel about the people. I love the people like I love cis and straight people. But they need you to say it out loud or you're not a member of their club. So when Gavin speaks to the left, he speaks into that echo chamber, he says things entirely different. And he's not the only one. This is amazing. Only 1 out of nearly 20 surveyed Democrats who may run in 2028 says a man cannot become a woman. Rahm Emanuel is the only one who just flat out said no. Most didn't want to talk about it. You know, people like AOC, Kamala Harris, Pritzker, they don't really want to talk about it. Right? A couple of them have, you know. What did Newsom have to say about it? Huh? Right? When he was talking to Ben Shapiro, he said, he asked Gavin Newsom, can a man become a woman? And Newsom stumbled upon answering, saying, yeah, I just don't. Well, I think for the grace of God, yeah. Shapiro asked, why is it so hard to answer? And Newsom said, well, we're talking about so few people that are struggling with gender identity issues. A lot of remarkable people, a lot of wildly successful people. And they've gone on in their life to have incredible lives. I don't know. There's so much hate and bigotry, so much combination. Shapiro said it's not an act of bigotry to declare that boys cannot become girls. But they dodge that question because they're afraid that it might leak into the echo chamber. They need to be saying the buzzwords. They need to be agreeing with the buzz theories, or they're afraid they're going to lose the left's vote. The left is afraid of the truth, 100%. But more to the point, more than afraid of, they know what they're doing. They're perverting the words to sort out who's really on board and who might be a straggler. That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. We can support members of the trans community in any way that makes perfect sense. But there's got to be some concessions along the way. We can't just let everybody act however they want because they have this or they have that. I see that a lot right now where like people who are slightly autistic or people who have ADHD, two things that I have, anybody who's met me in my real life knows I'm weird. I've got some wiring that's off. But none of that is an excuse. None of that is an excuse for me to act inappropriately or to do inappropriate things, let alone do illegal things. But that's what the left wants. The left wants everybody's excuses to be excuses for whatever it is that they want to do. And that is no way to run a society. So we're going to stay in California. You know, right now, everybody's talking about, ICE raids and Trump and Greenland and blah, 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 blah. Release the Epstein files. Holy crap. We are so playing into what the media and the politicians want. Meanwhile, you know what happened here in California? The head of an LA homeless nonprofit was charged with pocketing millions. He bought all kinds of luxury trips and clothing. The guy's name's Alexander Sufer. Yeah, that's Soofer, Sufer. He used $10 million for his own personal spending. He even bought a house in Greece. They actually have the check that he wrote to purchase the property in Greece, and it comes from his funds. I mean, that is ridiculous. He received $5 million directly from the LA Homelessness Service Authority and over $17 million through other nonprofits. He spent $47,000 on restoration hardware for his house. He spent $15,000 at Hermes, $15,000 at Chanel, $4,500 for a 4-day night at Wynn Las Vegas. And meanwhile, what was he doing? He was feeding, to get this, okay? He was paying his staff minimum wages and feeding the residents in his housing site ramen noodles, canned beans, and breakfast bars that were heated up in a microwave. That's what he was feeding. That shows his contempt for those people. Not even giving them a decent meal. So much greed, so much corruption going on here. You know, and the reason why this is important, it's right here. I know I'm all over the place. I try my best to be organized. I really do. But under one of the complaints against him was a property that was purchased in Greece on a check for $475,000 issued from the Abundant Blessings bank account. He literally bought a house using a check from the charity. And the reason this is concerning is because as of 2024, we had over 187,000 homeless people, about 24% of the nation's total. What? We have 50 states and a quarter of the homeless live here. Yeah, well, that's the weather. Once again, California, the best things about California are the things the government can't control, like our weather. But to put that in perspective, that's about the population of Akron, Ohio, or Glendale, California. Yeah, that's a lot of homeless people. So we know that there's a lot of grift and corruption going on here. And in 2024, they say they did a report. Grant Parks went out. He was a state auditor. And he said he analyzed 5 housing programs that received approximately $13 billion in combined funding, and only 2 were likely cost effective. He also added in the report that between 2018 and 2023, California cities lacked reliable data to track cost efficiency and outcomes needed to fully understand why the problem didn't improve, despite the billions being spent. But wait, it gets worse. California now wants to inspect our garbage. They want to make sure that we are putting our food in the green trash bag or can. No, I'm not doing it. I'm not putting food in with my yard clippings. Okay? I am not wasting water cleaning out my garbage can because it stinks to high heaven because I've been putting food in it. All right? Take my damn trash and bury it. The worst part is homeowners and rent control and landlords are going to be the ones that are most targeted because renters in a big apartment complex use a community bin. So who are you going to go after? Who voted for this shit? I didn't vote to have somebody inspect my trash and tell me how to dispose of my trash. I mean, you want to talk about fascism, tyranny, kings? That's what we're seeing here in California. All right? I sort my trash into 3 bins. All right? Trash, recyclables, and green. That's it. I am not putting my food in with the green. That's just stupid. You figure out where to put it. You figure it out. But don't come looking at my trash cans. No. And for what? We've cleaned up California, but according to the climate alarmists, we're still doomed. We're not a beacon because most of the pollution is from other countries that don't really have any choices in the matter. They have to burn coal because that's what they've got. We have to balance our climate goals against the cost and the loss of freedom. Trash is a big one, all right? Develop better systems, but stay out of my trash. That's my bottom line on this. You do not need to make trash companies and inspect our trash. And then who's going to pay for those inspectors? We are. We're going to pay more for our trash because the government of California wants us to recycle a certain way. This is a fucking pipe dream. No matter how clean California is, it is just a tiny blip in the overall problem. And to make us go bankrupt while entire nations are polluting at will is just ridiculous. And none of us voted for this. Nobody voted for this. Nobody voted to have our trash inspected. I'm sorry, but to me, that is a sure sign of tyranny. When a government is telling you how to dispose of your trash, look, you want to sort out my trash and put it here and put it there, and you think that's going to save the environment? Fine, you do that. But I ain't paying for it. The trash companies aren't paying for it. Gavin, put on some gloves, put on some wellies, and get out there and sort garbage if it's so goddamn important to you. But meanwhile, to keep us distracted from that, we have to sit here and argue about Trump's damaging our European relations because he wants Greenland. Well, you know what? Greenland, Venezuela, they have rare earth minerals, and China controls the market fully. Somewhere in the magnitude of 90% of rare earth goes through China. We need that. We're the good guys. We're the ones protecting the world. And as far as the fragile NATO, what the fuck is on with? Come on, NATO. Russia invades Ukraine in your backyard, and your response is to continue to buy Russian oil? That's what they did. It's right there. It's everybody verified it. I'm not making this stuff up. Europe continued to buy oil from Russia. They're weak. They're puppets. It's as bad as the UN. They're completely ineffectual. So there was a father, and he was using NFL mini helmets, right? Those little helmets that have the teams on there, to help his little girl Reese learn colors, geography, and introduce her to football. And she picked one up and threw it across the room. And her dad bet the team that she kept, and it became a thing on Instagram where this little kid uses screwy metrics, like what color dress she's wearing, and she picks the team that matches. You know how it is, okay? Some of us, believe it or not, that was me, okay? During my gambling days, that was me. I was the one who always came up with abstract ways of picking horses and picking sports teams. But anyhow, so he starts posting it online, and she's winning. She's actually doing pretty good because that's how volatile gambling actually is, You're almost better off just throwing darts. But after a while, some of her teams started losing. And that's when people started sending death threats to the little girl. Cardi B, that ridiculous woman, she literally came out on an Instagram live and said that, quote, "Little white girl said we were going to win. Fuck that bitch." Then she apologized and said, "I didn't mean to say that." I'm serious. You can look it up. The Instagram account is Trust the Toddler. This has been going on for 4 years. That's how ugly America is. But it brings me to a bigger point. Gambling. It has exploded. All of those commercials, Prize Picks, do this, do that, right? I was heavily involved, okay? I played online poker. I played the ponies, sports betting. I had bets on the Russian presidency. I had bets on the Academy Awards. I even had bets on Eurovision, the song contest over there. I had a gambling parlor over here, multiple computers, multiple TVs. We're just running shit all day long, late into the night. When the horses ran out in America, we switched over to Hong Kong, Australia. Yeah, I've placed a lot of money into Australia. It's a losing proposition. Gambling for fun will never make you a profit. Every now and then people will get lucky, sure, okay? And they'll make some money. But it is a losing proposition. The people who make money gambling, it's boring. They're not necessarily betting games simply because they're watching them. They're looking for that one or two bet that, excuse me, will make them a profit. There's a lot of times, if you're not familiar with how gambling works, there's times where you'll put up $1,000 just to win $100. That's what the pros do because it's a sure thing. It's the favorite, not a favorite in horse racing because believe me, the favorite in horse racing is no sure bet. But there are times, when you look at football, soccer. I remember a time where I had a bet where it was World Cup and it was France versus the Faroe Islands. and France only had to, the spread was 2.5 goals, or you could just bet a shit ton of money to win a little bit of money on France outright. All France had to do was win the game. We dumped everything on France. They won 7-0. That's how pros do it. It's boring. It's not going on and putting your favorite team in or putting your favorite players on a fantasy ticket. That is long-term going to lose you money. How do they, the old adage is, if people won, how does Vegas keep all those lights on? And I'm really worried about this because I was around people, and myself included, who were pretty serious about our research and how we did things. Okay, sometimes with the horses, we got loose. Every now and then we needed to get a little loose, and we just bet stuff just for fun. You know, we were amateurs, I suppose you could say, but we understood what the pros were doing. What's going on now is you have young people starting out their lives who are pumping money into these asinine gambling sites, and they're running up against computer algorithms and pros. It's a losing battle. Speaking of losing battles, the battle for our country to become purple always seems like it's a losing battle. It always seems like it's an uphill battle. So what can we do? What can we do to try to win this battle? How can we claw back or force journalists to start being a little more objective? Well, one thing you could do is you can move to the center, okay? Philosophically move to the center. Just say from now on, I am an independent centralist, okay? And leave your echo chambers. See what other people are saying. Read both sides, okay? I've said this before. If you see something on Fox, read about it on CNN and vice versa. Read the comment section. See where the true middle of the story is. But we also have to just drop the baggage of the parties. Like I was saying earlier, men can menstruate? No, they can't. Trans men can. Trans men need to go to a gynecologist. Men do not need to go to a gynecologist. That's the truth. That's the reality of the situation. Just because you recognize the reality of a situation doesn't mean you hate anybody. That's what they want you to think. And we need to change that. Same thing with the right. Abortion is not murder. These people are not pro-life. They're pro-birth. They've got their religion all mixed into their politics. We need to set that stuff aside for the betterment so that we can focus on pressuring our politicians to do the right thing. And the right thing is cleaning up the streets, cleaning up the corruption, getting us back to a place where we can survive. Not all this deficit financing for all this bullshit that you're selling to both sides. No, reality. That's what we need to get back to. You see, the left and the right live in fantasy worlds. Purple is trying to live in reality, and we need to do that. I cannot stress that enough. We need to move back to a centralist position before it's too late, because both sides have some really effed up shit about their extremes, and that's where we're being pulled. And the media loves it. They love us in those boxes. Like I said, it makes them easy for them to direct their propaganda, their ads, and it helps to the politicians by creating a smokescreen. Excuse me for that. Well, thank you for your time if you're still here. You know, I really appreciate it. I'm trying to do this for the betterment of the country. I really am. I'm King Copious on Purple State Party. And so are you. Love one another. Keep on grinding. And, you know, you got to shake that stress off. If it's not exercise, then do what I always say. Dance it out.